that, I'm going to introduce Brian Seaman from the Alberta Civil Liberties, and I'll let him take us off here.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you very much, Michelle, for organizing this event tonight and bringing us all together to discuss this very important issue. I am a civil liberties and human rights research lawyer. I work for the Alberta Civil Liberties Research Centre, and I want to make it clear that I am here on my own behalf here tonight. My views do not necessarily reflect the views of my colleagues and indeed the centre itself, although I assure you, being civil libertarians, there's a lot of empathy there for people who have been deemed to be criminals by the federal government because they use marijuana for medical purposes. I'm going to be restricting most of my comments tonight to the medical marijuana regulations, and I'll be critiquing them from a civil liberties perspective, and then I'll be wrapping things up by explaining why I am in favor of absolute legalization and not decriminalization. I live in Kensington, Sunnyside, and there are two colloquially known head shops on 10th Street Northwest, and they contain paraphernalia, and everybody knows what that paraphernalia is used for. And I look at these shops as sort of symbols of the hypocrisy of the society we live in. It's not technically illegal to smoke a marijuana joint. That's technically correct. It's not technically illegal, but it is illegal to buy, sell, and grow unless you qualify for a medical exemption.
Brian, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's a fan right here that's really loud. So could you speak up just a bit?
Oh, sure. How's this? How's this?
That's better.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
I can project the theatrical voice. The medical exemption is under Health Canada. It's actually a fairly recent thing. The medical exemptions came into effect following a decision of the Supreme Court of Canada back in 2000 in the case of the Crown versus Terrence Parker. Terrence Parker was a man who suffered from epilepsy, and he found that smoking marijuana was the most effective way to control his very severe epileptic seizures. There was no exemption for medical marijuana up until this case, and he grew his own product, and the police got wind of it somehow and investigated, and he was charged with illegally growing marijuana. And the Supreme Court of Canada, his case did make its way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and the argument at the Supreme Court of Canada was that his Section 7, his Charter Section 7 rights to life, liberty, and security of the person were imperiled by prohibition against marijuana. He argued successfully, his lawyers argued successfully that he needed marijuana to control his seizures, and that this prohibition constituted an unjustifiable infringement not only on his personal liberty, but also indeed on his right to access a substance to ensure him a better life. Now the court did find then, they struck down the existing marijuana prohibition. They found it unconstitutional because it said that there was not an exemption for medical reasons. So this is how the medical marijuana exemptions came into effect, because the government of the day then said, okay, well fine, we'll bring in these exemptions for medical reasons. And they brought in what's called the medical marijuana access regulations. Many people in the room here will know that there are two categories under which you can get a certificate. You have either severe pain or weight loss because of cancer or AIDS, nausea from cancer, severe pain from arthritis, and a list of other health conditions. Then there's category 2, which is any debilitating symptoms or conditions that do not fall under category 1. So that means that it's easy to get a certificate, right? No, hardly. Because as many people in the room know, you have to apply for such an exemption. You need to fill out a declaration. I've read the declaration. It's voluminous, it's confusing, it's difficult to fill out. It makes an income tax, long-form income tax form look easy in comparison. You also need to get a doctor to sign off on a certificate. The certificate, the doctor has to certify that you do indeed qualify for an exemption, and that should not be a problem, right? Getting a doctor to sign off on a certificate. Well, as many people in this room will know, it is indeed not only difficult, it's virtually impossible to get a certificate, to get a doctor to sign off on such a certificate. There was a case that came before the Ontario Superior Court back in 2011, and I wrote a blog about it. The man's name was Matthew Murnau. He suffers from various medical conditions, including fibromyalgia and various other neurological conditions. And he had tried numerous different medications, and the only substance that controlled his symptoms was marijuana. So he was growing his own marijuana, and he was charged with illegally growing marijuana. The case made its way to the Ontario Superior Court, and the Ontario Superior Court Justice struck down Canada's marijuana medical regulations as being unconstitutional, because what he found, based on the evidence that Mr. Murnau's lawyer led, was that effectively the physicians of this country are colluding in denying to hundreds of thousands, perhaps over 1 million Canadians, the right to access state-sanctioned and approved marijuana. The lawyer for Mr. Murnau argued successfully before the judge that effectively the doctors in this country were colluding and denying a right to marijuana for persons who needed it to control their symptoms. And the court found, therefore, that Mr. Murnau's Section 7 right to security of the person, to a substance that helps to control his symptoms, was violated. The Crown, on the other hand, they had argued unsuccessfully at this level. The Crown had argued that the doctors were not could not be considered to be actors or agents of the state, because the state doesn't have any role in telling the doctors, well, you have to prove the certificate or you have to not approve the certificate. That is a totally bogus argument. We do have a public health care system in this country. Doctors' salaries are paid by you, by me, by all of us, the taxpayers. They are indeed agents of the state. They are employees of the state. Therefore, this argument did not fly with the judge at the Ontario Superior Court level. Unfortunately, the matter was appealed, and the Ontario Court of Appeal, unfortunately, 2 years later, actually just this year, earlier this year, reversed the findings of the Ontario Superior Court and reinstated the medical marijuana regulations, said that they were in fact constitutional, and sent the matter back to trial. So it is still very much a real issue for Mr. Murnau. His liberties at stake, his Section 7 interests are at stake, and indeed the interests and the personal security of hundreds of thousands of Canadians, perhaps over 1 million Canadians who need marijuana to help control their symptoms. Their liberty is at stake. The medical marijuana regulations themselves, I have very grave concerns as a civil libertarian, as somebody who has had relatives who have had debilitating conditions, and indeed personally know people who smoke marijuana on a regular basis to control muscular sclerosis. I know of an elderly woman in her late 70s who needs to smoke marijuana on a regular basis to help her deal with the nausea she experiences with chemotherapy. I think it is fundamentally, blatantly, egregiously wrong to live in a country where we have over 1 million people who are branded criminals for smoking a product that they need to control their symptoms or to control their conditions. And I think that as a civil libertarian as well, I have grave concern over the fact that when people opt into these medical marijuana regulations, their information, their personal information is on record. The government knows who is smoking marijuana. They also know who is selling the marijuana to these people, because in order to get the marijuana legally, the people have to apply for and get get a certificate from, or rather get a licensed grower to grow it for them. And that's even if they can get the certificate at all, because as many people in the room know, it's virtually impossible to get a certificate legally in this country. So, over 1 million Canadians who require the substance to help control their symptoms are therefore obliged to go to an alternative means to get their product. And I can personally vouch for the fact that I know anecdotally and personally know people who sell the product, and they make getting this product to people who are sick, who are dying, who are suffering, their priority. Sorry, there's just a note here. Could you talk about the legal action being launched by John Conroy? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that, so I can't.
We'll just
I
pass it
could
on to the
speak
other
to that
panelists
later
then.
if
Perfect.
you want, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, so I'm opposed to medical marijuana regulations, not because I'm opposed to people having access to a substance they need to control their symptoms. I'm opposed to it for 2 reasons. First of all, because I think there are civil liberties implications with government having that kind of information on its citizens. And secondly, I'm in favor of legalization. I think that it's a person's choice, an adult's choice, what you want to do with your body. Cigarette smoking has been proven to be egregious for the health, and yet that's a legal substance. Alcohol is the gateway drug. Alcohol is the gateway drug to a lot of other drugs, and alcohol is responsible for, billions and billions of dollars in lost productivity, and yet that's a legal substance.
Isn't advertising guilty of that?
Yeah, right. I don't know how many people are familiar with the history of prohibition on marijuana, but and perhaps Keith can talk about this some more when he talks. But it was not illegal to smoke marijuana, up until the 1920s, both in this country and in the United States. But for some reason, that time frame. The racism was much more blatant then, and you had an increase in immigration, and the powers that be in the United States and Canada looked at this product, and it was linked with, Black Americans, with Mexicans, and God forbid, jazz musicians. I mean, this whole notion of reefer madness, right? I mean, one hit from that joint will turn you into a homicidal maniac, a rapist, or God forbid, somebody would hang out with Negroes, Mexicans, and jazz musicians. And the racism that the cause was steeped in, it was very blatant then. And we can look at a movie like Reefer Madness. I don't know how many people have seen Reefer Madness. Even by the standards of 1930s movie making, it was a badly made movie, right? It's no Citizen Kane, that is for sure. We watch it now for its camp value and we laugh at it.
Yes.
But we have, in this day and age, a far more sophisticated way of categorizing issues. And we can laugh at the rhetoric and the overblown rhetoric and the racist rhetoric of the 1920s and the 1930s, but we still have it today. It's just a lot more sophisticated, right? Now it's coached in, the war on drugs and, the evils of marijuana. We have to protect our children. The rhetoric is still there. It's just become much more sophisticated. And I don't want to see my niece continue to live in a country where we are making criminals of millions and millions of Canadians, over 1 million Canadians who need this product for controlling symptoms and for helping to control conditions like muscular sclerosis. And I also don't want to see government telling me and telling other people what we can and cannot do. I personally know of many people who, after a busy week, pour a glass of wine and spark up. I have been an occasional user since I was 19 years old. What I do on the weekends in the privacy of my own home is my own business. I can think of a lot of practical economic reasons why marijuana should be legalized. We tax it, we regulate it like we do with alcohol. Just like alcohol has different concentrations of alcohol in liquid, and you pay more for 40% proof. We could do the same thing with THC products. And we could regulate it and keep it out of the hands of children. I'm opposed to decriminalization because decriminalization for me, I mean, there are people who say that decriminalization could include just, could represent just allowing people to smoke a small amount or have a small amount in their possession and then fine them. Well, that is not legalization. I'm opposed to that. I do not want the state involved at all in telling me what I can do with my body. The only reason why I would want to see state involvement would be to monitor the production of the substance, so I know what I'm smoking, so I know that I'm not smoking something that's laced with PCP or has illegal pesticides in it, and God knows what else in it. It should be regulated and taxed, and the taxes should then go into the public trust, the public funds, to help pay for our roads, our schools, and our healthcare system, just like we do with alcohol. I think I will end on that note. Oh, I did want to say just one final thing, and that is that because of how I've seen this issue played out in the courts, where with the Ontario Court of Appeal decision in the Murnau decision this year, which effectively restored these regulations and therefore means that prohibition is going to continue. I'm going to tell you flat out, and especially you, Keith, and any other 420 activists here, if you're contemplating launching another court challenge or a constitutional challenge, I would urge you to save your money and to spend it lobbying, perhaps make donations to candidates who are in favor of legalization. Having said that, there's no shortage of lawyers that would be quite happy to take the $250,000 and take this all the way to the Supreme Court. But it's clear to me that the legal process, the judicial process, you've hit a dead wall there. And so I think that now it is a political issue, and it is in the political arena that this must be resolved, and it must be resolved by a government finally doing the adult thing and legalizing this thing and taking us from the early 20th century of Ku Klux Klan men, lynching black people, into the 21st century where we've moved beyond, where many of us have moved beyond racism, and many of us who believe in liberty are quite happy with a regime where we are allowed to do what we want with our bodies, so long as we're not harming other people. It is our right to do what we want with our bodies. And I think I'll end on that note.